Hello, welcome to our Taters Incorporated demonstration and discussion of our new operating system. My name is David Adler. Our new operating system that I propose for you here today is called Linux Mint. First, why Linux? I guess the biggest reason we want to choose Linux is that it's available at no cost. It's open source, which essentially makes it free to download, install, and use. In comparison, a Windows 10 Enterprise operating system license can cost $84 per user per year, and possibly even more. It's less resource intensive than Windows 8 or 10. You can comfortably run a Linux desktop operating system in a virtual environment with only 20 gigabytes of hard drive space. Windows generally needs 60 gigs or more to do much with it. The minimum disk space, according to Windows, needed to install Windows 10 is 16 gigs. And productivity applications such as LibreOffice are nearly equivalent to Microsoft counterparts and often are available at no cost. Cost benefits. How much would you spend if you were to upgrade and run Windows, say Windows 8 or Windows 10 operating system? Well, for the Office suite, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and all the rest, spend anywhere to $494.68 depending on the version and where you get it from. That's according to Google. A Windows operating system, just the alone version of Windows 10, can cost up to $200 each, depending on the version and the vendor. A program such as Adobe Photoshop, license fees can range anywhere from $119 to $348 per user per year for a single license. To get a permanent version, that will cost about $700. Of course, there are free versions of productivity software that run on Windows, but they may have time limitations on how long you can run them. And what about Linux? First, LibreOffice. It's free. It's basically equivalent to Microsoft Office. Most of the same features, but free. The operating system software itself, also free. GIMP, which is a photo editing program similar to Adobe Photoshop, free. And most other software packages available for Linux are also free. And here's a graph showing the basic cost comparisons between the Windows and the Linux equivalents. Security benefits. Is Linux secure? Well, that's more or less a matter of opinion, but many IT pros consider Linux to be more secure because the source code is open and available to review. Thus, it is easier to identify and fix vulnerabilities. And with Windows, the source code is never revealed, and patches take much longer to release. Generally, patches are released on the second Tuesday of every month, and you'd have to wait that long for the next main security release patch to be released. Also, Windows is considered a favorite target for malware creators and other people who generate viruses and attack Windows programs, because so many people use Windows and it makes it an inviting target for them. Reliability benefits of Linux. Linux is generally considered more reliable than Windows, with a strong focus on process management, system security, and uptime. Windows has improved a lot over the years in this area, but many sacrifices it has made to make it more user-friendly also makes it a bigger security and attack footprint, and makes it more susceptible to system instability and vulnerability. Therefore, Windows could be considered less reliable than Linux. Software considerations. As we've talked about previously, many good productivity applications are available for Linux-based workstations at no cost. But what about those who are stuck to their favorite Windows applications? How will we accommodate them? First, there's a program called Wine, which is a compatibility layer that you can install on a Linux system to allow you to run Windows programs. And also there's Samba, another free Linux program which lets a Linux-based workstation access a Windows server, join a Windows Active Directory domain, and access files on a Windows file server. Hardware considerations. We all know that most devices on the market are supported by Windows. A device manufacturer would be crazy not to, just because Windows has been around for a long time and is frequently used by people. Most users out there are on Windows, so it makes sense to support Windows users. But what about Linux? Linux is relatively new in this industry. Once about a decade ago, the only people who made device drivers usable for Linux were enthusiasts who had the spare time and the necessary resources to do so. However, as the user base of Linux-based operating systems has grown in recent years, device manufacturers are giving Linux-based operating system more attention and putting them on the same level of priority as Windows. So if you're purchasing a new device and need to put it on a Linux-based workstation, you'll have just as much chance of being able to have the drivers that you need as you would if you were using Windows. User support. There's plenty of information online, literature forums, Q&As, and other types of information on both types of operating systems. There shouldn't be a problem either way. Use. We get it. Linux is much harder to learn for beginners than Windows. More about Linux is based on the command line interface, which by its very nature is much harder to learn. As opposed to Windows, everything is more intuitive. However, the GUI on most Linux distributions is not all that bad. In fact, Mint is designed specifically to help ease the transition from Windows to Linux. As a Linux novice, I can still get around Mint's GUI without too much trouble. This is the main reason why I went with Linux as my choice for our new operating system. So why Mint? I simply looked at operating systems. My first priority was to look for ones that were free, and Fedora, of course, was outside the bounds of our project, and that really left me with, say, Ubuntu and Mint. And I had some experience with Ubuntu before, and I had a little bit of trouble installing it, but that could have been based on my processor and memory selections on my VM. But I also tried Mint as well. They're sort of similar to one another, and I like the color scheme on Mint, and I had easier time using it. It was easy to figure out, navigate, and Basically, what I was looking for was something that had the versatility, the ease of use, and also was as opposed to the expensive operating system or licenses like we are having with. To summarize, why is a Linux-based operating system better for our company? Number one, cost. As we've seen, most everything that you need with Linux is free or very low cost, if it costs anything. And the operating system itself is also free to use. It's also less resource intensive. In most cases, you can run Linux and applications with less memory and disk space. On the demonstration that I'm about to show you, I built out that VM with 20 gigabytes of hard disk space only. Try doing that with Windows and putting stuff on it. You wouldn't be able to do it, more than likely. From a security standpoint, distributions are generally respond quicker to discovered vulnerabilities than Windows do. As Linux is open source, it is easier to build software patches. And due to the sheer number of users on Windows, Windows is also considered a bigger target for attackers. Linux Mint is also designed to be an ideal OS for those who are jumping Windows to a Linux-based operating system for the first time. And that's probably one of the other primary reason why I chose it. Also, open source packages such as Wine and Samba make it easy for anyone who's dependent on Windows file systems or Windows applications, anything Windows-based. They'll be able to make that conversion, that jump, quite easily and quickly with those two programs that'll let you use them in combination with Windows, between Windows and Linux rather seamlessly. Even though Linux is generally more difficult for beginners to use, there's plenty of support literature available online for any distribution of Linux. And here are my sources. And shortly, I'm going to show you a demonstration of my VM and the operating system and our setup.